We in the force were under pressure because people wanted answers. People wanted to know what happened to Josie Joyce. And the people were asking, what's wrong with the guards? Why haven't they made an arrest? The stories were going out that the guards knew. But we had to put our investigation together that would stand up in the court of law. We just couldn't hop on a suspect. We had to have evidence.
September 1983. In County Mayo, the brutal murder of a helpless man sends the small Westport community into a state of fear. 17 years later, the reasons for the attack still remain a mystery. Murder is a horrific crime, no matter what the circumstances. But the repeated and violent stabbing of an innocent and elderly man is something which shocked even the most hardened detectives. For the town of Westport, it was something to send the entire community into shock. Early on a Saturday morning, a call was received at Westport Garda Station reporting the finding of a body behind the wall of the Christian Brothers School in the town. Brother Hugh McKinney had made the gruesome discovery.
That particular morning was a Sunday morning, and I can recall that it was the morning of the hurling All-Ireland final. I rose fairly early and was going to 8 o'clock Mass in the local church in Westport. The morning was blustery and wild, and I took the umbrella with me, but I had hoped to reach the church without getting wet. As I approached the main road, just inside the gate, I noticed something lying on the right-hand side inside the wall. I took a few steps forward and realized that it was the body of a male person.
The body was that of Joseph Joyce, a local man. He had been stabbed over 40 times. Josie Joyce was well known and liked in the community. He lived just outside the town on the Newport Road.
Josie Joyce lived about 1.5 miles from Westport Town with his brother Alfie. Josie was in his 60s. He was a jovial sort of a character in that he enjoyed a few beers in the local pubs, and he had a great love of Irish music.
At Christmas time, we used to go down to him every Christmas, and he used to love play the accordion. He loved Irish music and loved football, GAA, and great fun around the town. He used to go in there to McGreevy's, he's a news agent there, and he used to have great fun with the girls, like, he used to always, take one out or whatever, and that kind of a character, really. Harmless, no one, he wouldn't harm anyone, but very, very funny and liking himself,
I did know Josie, yes, I knew Josie for years, and he always had a word for everybody. And sometimes he would have the couple of buckle, well to, kind of thought to, words like that. And he was a jolly person, very inoffensive and unassuming man. And I think one of his biggest interests in life was sport, and particularly Gaelic football and hurling. And as it happened on the day after he was murdered, there was an All-Ireland hurling final. And more than likely, Josie, well, he was in Sally O'Brien's at the time, it's now McHale's Bar on Bridge Street, on Peter Street, spoke probably for the night about who was going to win the following day and who wasn't going to win, and that kind of thing,
What was the motive for this vicious attack? Josie had no known enemies, and Westport at the time was a quiet seaside town where everyone knew everyone else. His murder had a huge impact on the local community. The severity and brutal nature of the attack caused shockwaves which were reverberating throughout the whole town.
I was a journalist with the Mayo News at that particular time, and for a murder to happen in Westport, it was big news. And it sent shockwaves, not alone throughout the community in Westport, but throughout the whole county. And it made it worse by virtue of the fact that Josie Joyce, whom everybody knew, was murdered for no apparent reason. There didn't seem to be any motive. It wasn't murder. It wasn't murder for robbery or something like that. It wasn't a vendetta or contract killing or something like that. He was not that type of individual. And it certainly sent shockwaves throughout the community. And naturally, everybody was feeling terribly, terribly sorry for the family, the Joyce family, who were well known in the town, well respected.
That particular weekend I was out shooting, actually, took shooting with friends, and we went home. It was a very bad night. It was actually a very stormy night, if I remember. And one particular thing was very quiet. It was one night, like, there's been discos on in the town, but that particular night seemed to be very quiet. There seemed to be no one actually around at all. And we just, the next morning, the following morning, which was a Sunday morning, Father King was the priest, the parish priest at the time, came into my father, I think it was around 8 o'clock at the time, and told him that Josie was found, and they thought it was actually a hit-and-run accident, you know, they were going home from the weekend. And when we went down, I didn't actually see his body now because I couldn't look at it at that time, but they had him covered over, like, but my father actually had to identify the body, and it really knocked it out of him, you know, big time, like, so. It was such a shock the way it happened, you know, everything happened, and it's kind of like a blur, really. That was unbelievable, and like something that you see in a horror film, that it could actually be done to a person like him. So he was such a gentleman, like.
Generally, the people were shocked when word got out. And I know that until the culprit was actually found, that there was a fantastic fear around the place. And we were all wondering who could have done it.
That night, September the 4th, it appears that Josie went into town and visited one of the local pubs where a traditional Irish music session was in full swing. Josie had travelled into the town during the afternoon to buy some groceries, and it wouldn't have been unusual for him to spend Saturday evenings there.
Because Sally O'Brien's was the last pub he actually left. He was actually dancing up there with Irish music, of course, and he'd a great night in it. And I think he left at close to midnight, and he'd come down on down James Street, over the bridge, and down by the garage where it actually happened. And at that particular point, he just crossed the road over, because the footpath used to end in around there, and he crossed the footpath to the Christian Brothers side of the road, and he'd walk down continuous from there. But that's where he was actually found, inside the Christian Brothers, as you know, like, and that's where it must have happened. The only thing we could think of is that the guy that done it might have been actually interfering with the premises at the time, the Gannon's garage at the time there. It was all known as Gannon's, and we thought that he might have been breaking in, because Joseph would be the type, if he seen someone doing something wrong, he'd tell them, get away from there, leave that alone, like, you know, that kind of thing, not to be interfering with someone's property, you know, because it's something that he wouldn't like to see happening. And this is the only thing we could think of, that's why he'd have threatened on him at that particular point.
Did Josie Joyce say something that may have provoked the attack on him? Had he seen his killer before? Did he know him?
Well, yes, of course, I mean, he was mostly stabbed through his clothes, and not until he was stripped could you see the total extent, like, of what happened to him. But I saw him, and he was really, the front of him was really riddled. There was supposed to be 45 knife wounds in him altogether, and only 5 of them were in his back. All the rest were in the front part of him.
Josie Joyce had been savagely attacked, stabbed again and again. His body had been dragged across the road and left behind the school wall.
I came on duty that morning, the 4th of September, at 10 o'clock. And the first job I was given was to go out and check the pubs to know if Josie Joyce had been drinking there the night before. So I did all James Street, and I remember I went up to Michael's, and then I found out that he was there, and that he left at about 11:30.
The West Bar is situated in the centre of Westport Town. It's a local haunt where young people drink and play pool. On the Sunday morning following Josie's death, Jim Kelly, the owner of the bar, found an item which was to prove to be a vital piece of evidence in the solving of the murder of Josie Joyce.
It was difficult, a very difficult investigation due to the fact that there was no motive. But certain developments did take place. One development was, which turned out to be very important, later it turned out to be important, was a local publican found an empty cardboard box on Sunday morning at about 12 noon in his pub.
During the process of the cleaning, I found a box, a cardboard box in the toilet in the men's room. It was a box that had contained a knife. There was writing on it to that effect, and a picture, if I can remember, of the knife, which looked like a large hunting knife. The box was empty, but I decided not to throw it away, and I just took it down and left it behind the bar. And later in the morning, when I opened the pub, around about probably 12:35, one or two customers came in, and I hadn't been out that morning. I just got up and did the cleaning, and they informed me that a man had been found murdered on the Newport Road, a couple of 100 yards away from the bar. And it suddenly clicked with me that this box was, ominous.
There was now some evidence to suggest that the killer might have been in the West Bar at some point during the previous day or evening. Jim Kelly remembered seeing someone who wasn't local in the bar several times that day.
I'd recall seeing him in the bar on the Saturday, probably before midday. Certainly it was in the early part of the morning session, and it was quiet. Just a few lads playing pool and in the bar, and one or two other customers, which was normal for a Saturday morning. But he wasn't in any way troublesome, or he just looked a normal young fella.
Gardaí began looking for clues as to where the knife may have been purchased. This knife, they believed, would lead them to the killer. Had it been bought locally, and if so, by whom?
On the Saturday, the 3rd of September, a gentleman went into a local fishing tackle shop and bought a hunting knife. The man that served him in that shop where he bought the hunting knife identified the box that was found in the pub on the Sunday as the box that he had placed the hunting knife in. So at this stage we had an empty box, but we had no murder weapon. Now, the description of this gentleman that purchased this knife fitted the description of the man that was in the pub where the empty box was found on the Saturday night. The same description also tied into a man who was acting rather strangely. He was agitated in a local hotel at about 11 o'clock on the Saturday night. So we had the gentleman in this local hotel agitated, the gentleman in the fish and tackle shop, and also in the West Bar where the box was found. At this stage, we were pretty confident that it was one and the same person.
As the Gardaí were building a picture of their main suspect in this case, the local community were fearful that this seemingly unprovoked killer would strike again.
This murder in Westport shocked not only this town, but the west of Ireland and even beyond. It put alarm bells ringing, not alone with the old, but the young. And people were scared, genuinely scared.
There was a huge element of fear came into the town at that stage. It was a very eerie feeling at night. Nobody was out walking on the street. Nobody was out walking, exercising like they did at the time. Really, when darkness came in, all doors were bolted.
The town has changed dramatically in the last 17 years. At that stage, the town was a small country town where everyone knew everyone else. And people were wondering, I wonder who did it? Was it a local person or what? Is there a killer among us?
As the community wondered about the identity of the killer, Gardaí were desperately trying to find further evidence against their main suspect.
Obviously, this case revolved around the knife. It turned out to revolve around knives. We had a number of knives coming to us through the course of the investigation. They came from as far away as 30 to 40 mile radius. Knives that were found, knives that have had a very good reason for being where they were. Nevertheless, they had to be eliminated from our inquiries.
Another piece of evidence also emerged quickly.
A bicycle was found on the Newport Road in the front lawn of a local man's house. And this bicycle was taken in and it was examined. It was discovered that there was traces of human blood on the handlebars of the bicycle.
It's not known how he bled. It can only be presumed that it was either happened in a frenzy, and this was a frenzied murder, or else it happened by defensive action by the deceased.
The break in the case came with information to the Gardaí from a reliable source. It concerned a man with a residence near Westport who frequently worked out of town.
Into about, I would say, the second week or the first 10 days of the investigation, a local member of the Gardaí got vital information from a confidential source to the effect that one of the suspects in our investigation, Mr. Thomas Kirwan, the information that this member of the force got was that Kirwan was at home that weekend and he was down at home in Glenhest, which is outside Newport, to be 15 miles from Westport. He was at home that weekend. Also, that member of the force discovered that Kirwan was of a violent disposition, was involved in crime before, and had served time in prison. This member of the force was adamant that Kirwan, in some way or other, was involved in this crime.
The information, however, was not conclusive. Yet.
It was decided to have two members of the Garda Síochána who went to where Thomas Kirwan was working. He was down there working in a building site in County Clare. The two members of the Garda Síochána actually went undercover and worked on the building site along with Thomas Kirwan.
Despite the murder squad's undercover work, Thomas Kirwan revealed nothing to the undercover Gardaí. The detectives on the team were faced with the problem of having enough evidence against Kirwan to arrest him. The initial evidence was sparse. There was still no murder weapon. The Gardaí had to look at alternative ways to try and get Kirwan to talk.
It was discovered during the investigation that this suspect, Thomas Kirwan, was involved in criminal damage to a window in a shop in Limerick a number of months prior to the killing of Josie Joyce. It was decided to arrest Kirwan for this crime in Limerick. And when the members of the investigating team that arrested him for the damage, they outlined to him that they were investigating the damage to the window, Kirwan replied to them, "Oh, I thought you wanted to talk to me about the murder in Westport." So it was decided to send some of our team to the suspect's apartment. They knew he was home because surveillance was being carried out on him. They knocked on the door. He came to the door of the apartment. They introduced themselves and told Kirwan that they were making inquiries regarding damage to a window in Limerick City. And his reply was, "Oh, I thought you wanted to talk to me about the murder in Westport." We had our man. Game, set, and match.
Thomas Kirwan, a 21-year-old carpenter's assistant living near Ennis in County Clare, began to open up to Gardaí about the events of September the 4th.
He came to town early in the day, apparently, maybe 12 o'clock on that Saturday afternoon, and he called to a number of pubs. During the course of the evening, he called to Hewittson's and bought a camping knife of some sort. and removed the wrapping. In the West, he had been in the Grand Central Hotel. There were a number of bars and hotels he had been in that day, and left to go home sometime around 12, maybe half 12. And that's when he met with Josie Joyce.
Kieran had stolen a bicycle in Westport on the night, and when he was making his way home on this bicycle, the chain came off at the local filling station beside where the body was found. Josie was passing by the filling station and observed Kieran in the forecourt of the filling station trying to fix the chain. Josie remarked, which would be typical of Josie's character, "What are you doing there?" At that stage, Kieran lashed out and stabbed him over 20 times. Josie came to a terrible, terrible death.
Gardaí now had an opportunity to find the murder weapon. Had it been destroyed or carefully hidden?
Thomas Kieran's apartment was searched during the course of the investigation. Actually, when Kieran was in custody, members of the Garda Síochána searched his apartment, and there they found in a bag the knife, which was the murder weapon.
The defendant thought he had washed the knife. In fact, he had made an effort to wash the knife. However, trace evidence, that was trace evidence of blood from Josie Joyce, was found on the knife by the scientist. Trace evidence was not alone found on the knife, it was found in the scabbard of the knife.
With the suspected killer now in custody, the relief in the community was tangible.
I remember standing outside the Mayo News office gates on James Street and watching about 30 or 40 or maybe 50 Gardaí sitting on the steps of the Garda station. And it was October, but the sun came out as if, you know, there was a meaning to all this, and it lifted. It was like a dark cloud that was lifted off the town at that time.
Despite the passage of time, the town still remembers the violent and unnecessary nature of the killing.
People that were here at the time in Westport, yes, we're now in the new millennium. They remember the death of Josie Joyce clearly. And some of them to this day would even remark to me, "Do you remember the Josie Joyce murder?" And they would talk about it now, and how sad it was. And it brought a huge sadness to the area at the time. We all have the right to live out our lives. But Josie wasn't given that opportunity, unfortunately.
He was a very unoffensive man. He couldn't offend anyone. That's the shocking thing about it. You know, he wasn't the thing that he said something cruel to someone or upset them or insult them or anything like that. And everybody loved him and got on with him so well. He was one of the characters in the town, and nobody ever, you know, never got into a row with anyone. This was the terrible thing about it all. You know, that it all happened so terribly, really, like at that night, you know.
Thomas Kieran received a life sentence for the murder of Joseph Joyce. He served 14 years and was released 2 years ago. However, no one, including Kieran, could explain his savage and unprovoked behavior that night. No one has ever been able to explain the reason behind the killing of a man the community liked, killed for no reason anyone could understand.